everyone! Today we're diving into this really powerful story from the Bible. It's all about what happens right after a massive miracle. It's this wild journey from, a moment of incredible triumph to a test of just bitter disappointment. And what it shows us is something really profound about turning hardship into hope. So this passage from Exodus chapter 15, it really sets the scene perfectly, doesn't it? I mean, you've got all the elements of a great story. Desperate people, water they can't even drink, a super strange solution, and then this powerful promise that leads them to a place of rest. So yeah, let's unpack this journey piece by piece. And right there, that's it. That's the core of everything we're talking about. That one single phrase is the absolute heart of the entire passage. It's the big idea God reveals about himself right in the middle of this crisis. And honestly, it is the key to understanding everything that follows. So this question really gets right to the heart of the tension in this story. I mean, just try to imagine the scene for a second. You have just seen the Red Sea part, a miracle for the ages, right? You're celebrating on the shore, the songs of victory are still on your lips, and then, bam, bitter disappointment. How do you even handle that kind of emotional whiplash? All right, so let's set the stage. The Israelites, they're fresh from this massive victory party on the shores of the Red Sea. You can just feel it, right? The adrenaline is high, faith is soaring. They have just seen God's power in a way they will never forget. But that incredible mountaintop experience is immediately followed by this hard, silent march straight into the desert. And get this, it only took 3 days, just 3 short days to go from seeing one of the greatest miracles in history to absolute desperation. It's crazy how fast that memory of victory can fade when you're overcome by thirst, isn't it? All that worship just soured into bitter frustration. And this just shows you the huge gap between what they were expecting and what was actually happening. I mean, you can't blame them for thinking, hey, if God can part an entire sea, surely he can give us some water. But nope. The reality was a brutal, thirst-filled test. And it's right here, in this jarring contrast, that the real lesson starts to unfold. So, you gotta ask, right? Was this just bad luck? Did they take a wrong turn in the desert or something? Well, the Bible tells us pretty clearly, no. This moment with the bitter water, it wasn't an accident. It was an appointment. It was actually a deliberate test, designed by God. Yeah, and the text is super explicit about this. This wasn't some random suffering. It was allowed to happen. God let this difficult, frustrating situation happen for a very specific reason. He wanted to reveal what was really in the people's hearts. It's pretty easy to praise God on the shoreline of a miracle. It's a whole lot harder to trust him when the water tastes bitter. Now, look at the contrast in how people responded here. The people's first instinct? Complained to their human leader, Moses. But Moses, he does something totally different. He cries out to God. And what does God do? He provides a solution that makes absolutely no logical sense. A piece of wood? Seriously? And yet, it's through Moses' simple, faithful obedience that the miracle happens. So, when you step back, you see that this whole event was really just a setup for this big revelation. It was never just about them being thirsty. God used a physical problem to reveal a deep spiritual truth about who he is, that he is the one who can take any bitter situation and make it sweet. He's the one who heals and restores what's broken. But you know what? The story doesn't end there, at the bitter water. Not even close. After the test, and after this big revelation, God leads them somewhere else. He guides them away from the place of testing and into a place of complete restoration. And this is where we see the heart of God so clearly. Look, Marah was a necessary stop on the journey, for sure, but it was never meant to be the final destination. Elim was waiting just down the road, and it was a place of overwhelming abundance. We're not talking about just one spring, but 12 of them. Not just a little shade, but 70 palm trees. It's such a beautiful picture that God's grace doesn't end the story in bitterness. Okay, so what does this story from the Bible have to say to us right here, right now? Why does this journey from Marah to Elim even matter today? Well, let's dive into the lessons we can pull from their experience. So that first stop, Marah, it teaches us some really critical lessons. First, that tests aren't punishments. They're actually opportunities God gives us to grow. They show us what's really in our hearts, our tendency to complain, and they reveal just how much we need to depend on him and him alone.
And maybe most importantly, they show that the first step to turning bitter into sweet is to cry out to God and just obey, even when his instructions seem kind of weird.
And then you have the promise of Elim. And this is the hope we can all hold on to during those difficult seasons. It's such a powerful reminder that hardship isn't forever. God is a restorer. Staying faithful through our own Marah moments, well, that leads to his Elim, a place of refreshment and provision. It's so important to remember. Bitterness is just a stop along the way. It is never, ever the final destination. Okay, let's bring this all back to that one central theme, that one name God wanted his people, and you and me, to know and remember through all of this. When you boil it all down, this is the lesson of Marah and Elim. It really is a call to action. In every bitter circumstance, every single moment of disappointment or pain, the invitation is always the same. Trust the God whose very nature is to heal and restore. You know, we all face Marah moments in our lives. We all come across those bitter waters of disappointment or frustration or pain. So the question this story leaves us with is a really personal one. When you face your bitter water, are you going to grumble in frustration or will you cry out in faith to the one who heals?